The laboratory pulsed with an indescribable energy. I, Astrid, watched my team of scientists gathered around a table full of monitors and graphs that flashed frantically. The aroma of fresh coffee mingled with the metallic scent of the equipment. "We're about to change the course of history," I declared, feeling my heart race. Mikkel, my pragmatic engineer, crossed his arms, his skeptical gaze fixed on me. "Do you really believe we're ready for this?" he questioned, the concern evident in his voice. "Every trip we take could alter reality in ways we can't even imagine." "But what is science without risk, Mikkel?" I countered with a determined smile. "We need to explore. And this is our chance." Lena, the astrobiologist, was engrossed in her notes, her eyes gleaming with the possibility of life on unknown worlds. "Astrid, if we can prove that life exists on other planets, it will change everything. Humanity needs to know," she added, her enthusiasm infectious. "Then let's do this," I said, and the atmosphere in the lab transformed into a mix of excitement and nerves. Jonas, our tech specialist, adjusted the controls of the quantum portal. "Everything's ready. We're set for the first trip," he announced, his smile revealing the anticipation we all shared. As the portal began to spin, a bright light illuminated the lab. "Remember, this is just a test," I warned. "We'll head to a nearby planet and return quickly." The team nodded, and without hesitation, we stepped through the portal. The sensation of dematerialization was both terrifying and fascinating. In the next moment, we found ourselves in an open field under a deep blue sky, with a radiant sun that seemed to pulse in harmony with our hearts. "It's beautiful," Lena exclaimed, admiring the alien landscape. After a few minutes of exploring, we returned to the lab. However, as soon as we passed through the portal again, something was different. The sunset, which used to glow in shades of yellow, was now blue. Mikkel frowned. "This isn't right. Reality has changed." "It's just an illusion," I responded, trying to stay calm. "Let's investigate." Lena, however, seemed less confident. "Don't you think we're tampering with something much bigger than we can comprehend? I have a past that might be connected to this." The tension in the air was palpable. "What do you mean, Lena?" I asked, intrigued. She took a deep breath, as if she was about to reveal a dark secret. "There was an experiment I was part of, something unregulated. It might be related to the anomalies we're starting to notice." Silence settled in, and I realized that our journey was only beginning. What had started as a simple exploration now seemed like a path filled with uncertainties and dangers. And yet, curiosity pushed us forward. The lab was in a frenzy, the excitement in the air tangible. I looked at the faces of Mikkel, Lena, and Jonas. It was time for another trip. "We need to explore more," I said, trying to hide the anxiety in my voice. "Curiosity is what brought us here." Mikkel crossed his arms, a gesture that always indicated his resistance. "Astrid, can't you see that this might be dangerous? Every time we use the portal, something changes. We can't just ignore the consequences." "But what we're doing is historic. Imagine the discoveries we could make." I retorted, my determination growing. "We can't stop now. We need to understand this better." Jonas, who was seated in front of a control panel, looked at us with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "I agree with Astrid. We have to keep going. We can learn to control the changes." But his voice faltered at the end, as if he himself was questioning the validity of his words. Lena, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. "I want to go too. There's so much to discover, but we have to be careful. We can't let ambition blind us." I noticed her voice trembling. Something from her past seemed to want to surface, but it wasn't the right time to discuss it. We agreed to make another trip. The portal pulsed, a bluish light enveloping the lab. As soon as we crossed, the feeling of vertigo took over me. The new planet was breathtaking, but at the same time unsettling. Strange rock formations rose at impossible angles, as if defying the laws of physics we knew. "Look," I pointed out. "There, it looks like there's a structure. Let's investigate." Curiosity guided us, but the tension was palpable. The local culture, when we approached, was strange and disconnected. The creatures inhabiting that place didn't seem to care about us. Their interactions were weak, almost as if we were in a distant dream. Should we interact with them? Mikkel questioned, his voice low. I could see the worry in his eyes. In contrast, excitement mixed with my desire to uncover the mysteries of that world. Yes, but with caution, I replied. We need to understand who they are before doing anything. When we returned, the lab's atmosphere felt different. The lights flickered and a sense of unease settled over us. Something's not right, I murmured. The computers started malfunctioning and visions of a chaotic future began to flash in our minds. What had we done? The tension in the lab was palpable when Mikkel broke the silence. Astrid, we need to stop this. We're messing with forces we don't understand. Each trip leaves marks we can't see, but we'll feel them later. The unease in his voice was clear, but I couldn't let doubt take over. Mikkel, I replied, trying to stay calm. We're on the brink of a discovery that could change everything. We can't stop now. We need to understand what's happening. If we can control the consequences, we can open doors we never imagined. I looked at my colleagues, searching for support. Lena, with her bright eyes full of curiosity, seemed eager for more. Jonas was more cautious, but still intrigued. What if the next trip takes us somewhere we can't control? What if we're chased by something we can't see? Mikkel pressed, his concern evident. We need to think about the ethical implications of this. Before we could discuss further, we decided to move forward. The third trip was scheduled. The excitement mixed with a nervous tension as we prepared. The moment we activated the portal, a deafening hum filled the room, and the sensation of crossing the barrier of space and time was overwhelming. When we arrived, I immediately sensed something was different. The sky had a strange hue, almost as if it was alive. But it wasn't the beauty of the place that scared me, it was the feeling that we were being watched. A chill ran down my spine. Does anyone else feel that? I asked, looking at the others. Yes, Jonas replied, his tone grave. It feels like we're not alone here. Suddenly, a quick movement behind us made my heart race. We need to get back. I shouted, but before we could react, a shadow lunged towards us. Panic set in, and we sprinted back to the portal. The way back felt endless, and I could feel the threatening presence right behind us. When we finally crossed the portal, the relief was brief. Visions of destruction began to invade our minds, as if what we brought back was consuming us. I could barely process what I had seen when Lena turned to us, her face pale and eyes wide. I'm having nightmares, she said, her voice trembling. They're coming back to me, about what happened when I was a child, the experiments. Her confession echoed in the silence of the lab, and a heavy weight settled between us. Lena, you need to tell us, I insisted, realizing that her pain might be the key to understanding what's happening. What happened? She hesitated, the words sticking in her throat. I was a test subject in a secret government project. They were trying to manipulate reality. I didn't know it could come back to haunt me. Her revelation cast a new shadow over what we had done. The silence that followed was deafening. Looking at each other, the reality of what we were facing began to sink in. We were beyond any possibility of control, and with each trip, the consequences became darker. The atmosphere in the research base was heavy, a cloud of anxiety hung over us. I looked around and saw Mikkel, his eyes full of concern, trying to make himself heard amidst the emotional chaos engulfing us. We need to stop this, Astrid. We're not just dealing with science. We're playing with forces we don't understand. Look at what's happened after our trips. Realities are unraveling. His voice was firm, but the frustration was evident. But I couldn't give up. The thirst for knowledge consumed me. Mikkel, you know as well as I do that we're on the brink of something monumental. We need to understand what the portals are showing us. We can't back down now. Lena, in a corner, shook her head, lost in thought. What if all this we're seeing is a direct consequence of our curiosity, our ambition? Have you ever stopped to think that maybe we should evaluate what we're sacrificing for this quest? Her voice trembled, and I could see that the memories of her nightmares were tormenting her. "We can't let fear control us, Lena," I replied, trying to keep the team united. "We need another trip. One that helps us understand once and for all what's happening." Mikkel crossed his arms, a gesture of resistance. "What if this takes us to a point of no return? Astrid, I can't let you take all of us into the abyss." But the idea had already taken root in my mind. We needed to go further, explore the limits. "Let's just see. One last test. I promise we'll be careful." He let out a deep sigh, resigned. "If you insist, then so be it. But I won't stand by if things go wrong." The tension in the air was palpable as we prepared for the next trip. The portal pulsed, a bluish light illuminating our faces. As we crossed, I was overcome by a strange sensation. The planet we found was a desert of ruins. The structures were immense, but they were covered in dust and desolation. "Astrid, this is horrifying," Jonas murmured, looking around. "What kind of civilization lived here?" I didn't have time to respond, because suddenly, I saw something that left me in shock. Standing before us were distorted versions of ourselves, some with expressions of pain and others in a state of absolute despair. One of them approached, and I felt my throat tighten. "You shouldn't be here," the version of me said, her voice echoing like a distant memory. "You can't change what has already happened." "But what happened?" I asked, almost begging for answers. She smiled, but it was a sad smile. "What you're seeking is what destroyed you. Curiosity can be our downfall." I felt my heart race. What were we doing? The realities began to overlap, and memories that weren't mine started to flood in. The chaos became overwhelming, and I realized we were on the brink of something much larger than any of us could have imagined. When we finally returned to the base, everything was disfigured. The walls pulsated, and reality seemed distorted, as if the very fabric of space-time was unraveling around us. "What have we done?" I whispered, feeling doubt creep into my heart. The versions of ourselves were still there, coexisting in a tangled web of alternate realities. And the question that echoed in my mind was the simplest one: who were we really now? It was a cold, cloudy morning when I decided that there was no more time to waste. The quantum portal pulsed in a hypnotic rhythm, as if it were calling to me. "Astrid, you can't do this," Mikkel insisted, his tone heavy with concern, but I was consumed by the need for answers. "If we don't try, we'll never know what's happening." "We have to restore reality," I responded, my heart pounding. The pressure of the voices in my mind, the visions of chaos, all of it pushed me forward. Lena, her expression full of worry, stepped closer. "Astrid, we've already lost so much. What if this trip takes us to an even worse place?" "We need to stop this," she said, the hesitation in her voice evident. But I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. "If you won't help me, I'll go alone," I declared, determined. The portal's glow reflected in my eyes, almost as if it were promising me a new beginning. I turned and activated the device, feeling the energy around me intensify. Suddenly, I was pulled into the portal, and everything around me dissolved in an explosion of light. When the light finally dissipated, I realized we were in a different place. The environment seemed familiar, yet at the same time, something was very wrong. It was as if each of us was in our own dimension, reflecting our deepest insecurities. "Mikkel, are you okay?" I called out, but I couldn't see him. His voice echoed from a distance. I don't know if I can face this." The fear in his voice made my heart ache. As I tried to find Mikkel, I was confronted by a distorted version of myself. "You can't escape who you really are," she whispered, and I felt a chill down my spine. But instead of giving in to despair, I took a deep breath. "I'm more than this," I replied to myself, feeling a wave of determination. I needed to find Mikkel and Lena. We needed to come together, to understand what the portals were really doing to us. And then, as if the universe had heard my thoughts, I saw Lena. She was surrounded by a thick mist, looking around in despair. "Astrid! You came," she shouted, and I ran to her, relieved. "Mikkel! We need to find him!" I yelled, urgency in my voice. "We can't stay here. This is an illusion." The reality around us began to tremble, and I realized that time was running out. We needed to escape before it was too late. The atmosphere at the base was tense, and I could feel the weight of what we had faced. I looked at Mikkel and Lena, their faces marked by the internal struggle. We need to regroup and discuss what happened, I suggested, trying to keep my voice steady. Mikkel nodded, but his gaze was distant. Astrid, all of this, it's unsustainable. We can't keep going like this. I know, I replied, feeling the pressure build in my chest. But we have to understand what the portals are doing to our reality. We can't let this defeat us. Lena, paler than usual, grabbed my arm. Astrid, you heard the message. The future version of me, she wasn't just warning us. She was telling us that we're playing with forces we don't understand. A new portal activated behind us, a blinding light filling the room. I turned, my heart racing. In the center of the portal, a figure emerged. It was Lena, but not the Lena we knew. Her gaze was deep and carried the weight of immense suffering. You need to listen. What's coming is worse than any of you can imagine. And my God. I murmured, unsure whether to fear or trust her. What happened? What did we do? The future version of Lena hesitated, her eyes filled with despair. You think you can control the portals. But every activation, every trip, is unraveling the very fabric of reality. A disaster is imminent, and you are the ones responsible. Mikkel looked at me, and I saw the doubt and fear in his eyes. This is a trap, Astrid. We can't believe her. It's not a trap, Mikkel. I said, frustration spilling over. She's proof that we need to stop using these portals. But how can we do that if we don't know what will happen next? We need answers, and we can't just stand still, Lena, the original, insisted. If the future version of me is right, we have to find out how to reverse this. If not, everything we love could be destroyed. So, we're going to use the portal again? Mikkel asked, his voice full of disbelief. Are we ready to face what's next? We have to be, I replied, feeling a surge of determination within me. If we don't do this, we'll lose everything.